If religious ministers had irrefutable proof of the existence of the personal God of the Bible, you would think they would want to get the word out. However, that is not how this small group of theistic scholars operates. For thousands of years, they have chosen to only hand down the secret directly from teacher to student. When I learned of this proof 14 years ago, it changed my life, causing me to go from agnostic astrophysicist to Orthodox Jew, and in the process, causing friction within my family and circle of friends. For millennia, believers and atheists have been arguing about whether God exists. When I used to debate against God's existence, I ran into typical responses that ranged from the problem of evil to a creation implying a creator. Counter-arguments by atheists resonated with me, and therefore I did not feel the need to delve further. Researchers like Stephen Mayer take the debate to the next level by revealing the signature in the cell, DNA evidence for intelligent design. I only learned of his work after I became religious, but I wonder, would I have been intellectually honest enough with myself to switch my position away from being an agnostic, like Anthony Flew did after decades of publicly arguing for atheism? And even if I would have believed in God's existence, would I have believed in a personal God? Or just an intelligent creator that perhaps had removed his providence from his creation? The key to the irrefutable argument I am about to present is the symbiotic relationship between the message and the messenger. This idea is never considered in classical rationalist thought, and neither is it discussed even in typical theistic philosophy. Despite how unique and strong this argument is, this pristine secret was never meant to leave its insulated enclave of Talmudic scholars who never debated the existence of God, given the nature of their upbringing. Do you think I am doing the right thing by breaking from this millennium-long tradition? Let me know in the comments below. I know it might sound corny, but before we begin, I suggest that you get a pen and paper and record the timestamps when you jot down your notes. Harvard-educated Rabbi Lawrence Kelemen created this powerfully insightful chart, a clip of which I am going to share from a video created from a lecture he gave titled A Rational Approach to the Divine Origin of Judaism.
I went to an elderly rabbi in Jerusalem, someone who has a consistent tradition going all the way back to Europe, and I asked him, all this Jewish stuff, how do you know it? How do you know it's true? And he said to me, I heard it from my Rebbe. I said, yeah, what's your Rebbe's name? He said, my Rebbe's name is Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz. I said, yeah, when did he live? When did he die? He gives me the birth dates, the death dates. I check it. I find several books that actually indicate a relationship between Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz and this guy. And I accept, okay, there probably was a relationship, this man probably existed. Then I start doing research. Who was Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz's Rebbe? And I find several Jewish books all saying that Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz was a student of Rav Simcha Zissel Ziv. I trace it back. Who is Rav Simcha Zissel Ziv's Rebbe? Well, he learned from a fellow by the name of Rav Yisrael Salanter. And I confirmed from 4 different sources there actually was a relationship. And so I played the game until I produced this document. It's a fascinating document. On the bottom right is Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz, the Rebbe of the man I was speaking to. On the top left is Moses at Mount Sinai, with birth dates and death dates. Now, this is one of thousands and thousands of Torah traditions you could produce.
Not only is there no gap between any teacher and student. In Hebrew, we call them Rebbe and Talmud, respectively. But there are many different lineages that can be created, especially from other communities like those of Sephardic descent. The most committed bearers of this sacred tradition have ensured the sanctity of this unbroken chain spanning thousands of years. Even within the Jewish framework from which this linkage originates, this argument is only used to convince Jewish doubters of the validity of the Torah's origin. It is never utilized to discuss the philosophical question of God's existence. With this in mind, let us hear about Rabbi Kelemen's discovery while studying at UCLA. He's going to start off already having referenced the fact that the scientific method requires repeatability, and this concept extends to general themes repeating when studying human history. As the saying goes, history does not repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
Religions borrow the same principle. In fact, one of my assignments at some point was to try to isolate the minimal number of themes I could come up with, which would allow me to produce every revelation narrative, every religion on the planet. That is, if you give me 25 themes, the themes that I specify, general themes, I can create any religion on the planet. There's the man who achieves great wisdom and then comes down and heals people. There's the person who becomes God incarnate. Right? There's 25 themes. I can create any religion you want except for one. There's one religion I can't create. There's one unique claim which is not specific, which is generic. That is, only once in 4,000 years of recorded human history was there ever a group who said, quote, God spoke to a group of people. Doesn't have to be 3 million in the science. God spoke to a group of people.
But the skeptic, who will have to admit that this is a very strong claim, can counter by trying to come up with a reasonable explanation for how such a large group of millions of people could be tricked. For example,
it was a national drug trip. So I say, great, gosh, why didn't I think of that? A national drug trip, that could do it. Let me ask you something. Is a national drug trip a natural event? Now you want to defend your theory, so you say, yeah, it's natural. I say, let me ask you a second question. Do natural events happen more than once? You say, yeah, of course. I ask you a third question. Did that ever happen again? Was there ever another group in history because of a national drug trip all thought they heard God saying the same words? You say, no. Then I say, then that's not natural.
This logic can be extended to any reasoning one might use to explain this incredible mass revelation. But what if someone says that it's a natural event with such a low frequency that it only occurs once in 3,300 years?
If the odds of an event taking place naturally are 1 in a million, what are the odds the event did not take place naturally? That is, what is the odds the event is somehow rigged? 999,999 out of a million. If it is outrageously unlikely that a natural event led to the Jewish belief that God spoke to the Jews at Mount Sinai, then it must be outrageously likely that it was not a natural event, but a supernatural event, a miracle.
If you want to say that the national revelation of God coming down on Mount Sinai was a delusion that could be explained by a highly improbable natural event, you would need to take a huge leap of faith instead of accepting the obvious truth that the personal God of the Bible exists. If you have any friends that are atheists, agnostics, or just plain have some doubts, then be sure to share this video with them. It might just change their lives. Now, in what would eventually become tense relations with my family and friends, it became clear that emotion, prejudice, and pre-existing notions play an even larger role in shaping one's worldviews than straight logic and reasoning. As part of their criticism, they wanted to know why such a strong argument would be kept hidden away for so long. Surely, if the rabbis believed it was true, they would try to disseminate the message to the whole world. This is a fair question. Why keep it a secret? The Jewish nation has undergone more persecution than any other group of people across the globe for thousands of years. And in an attempt for self-preservation, mixing with outside groups has typically been discouraged. Orthodox Jews, in particular, have such strong convictions about their faith that they are not seeking external approval. But given my background rooted in atheism, I saw an opportunity to use this argument as a way of proving the existence of the personal God of the Bible to the rest of the world. While Judaism discourages converts, it promotes non-Jews adopting the 7 Noahide laws with a promise of a place in the world to come as long as they accept that these laws were given from God to Moses at Mount Sinai. This was the main driver for me spending so many hours to produce this video. Would you like me to create a video about the 7 Noahide laws? If so, comment below and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next video. But if all this is true, then why does science disagree with the Bible on the age of the universe? Click here to see how the two views are actually not that far off. Or if you would like, click here to learn of my journey to solve one of life's biggest questions.